News is breaking that Ukraine fired U.S.-made long-range missiles into Russia earlier today. Now, this comes just 2 days after President Joe Biden lifted his so-called red line against these weapons being used by Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky. The timing has raised eyebrows as President-elect Trump has said he seeks a swift end to the Ukraine war. His Vice President-elect J.D. Vance has acknowledged that Russia might keep some of the territory it has occupied as part of any peace settlement.
Meanwhile, Russian leader Vladimir Putin has responded. He announced that he was lowering the threshold for a nuclear strike. Russia had been warning the West for months that if Washington allowed Ukraine to fire US, British and French missiles deep into Russia, Moscow would consider those NATO members to be directly involved in the war in Ukraine. So just to get us started here with the top lines, so to speak, what do you make of these latest developments? What should we make of them? What is their significance?
This is one of the most puzzling and potentially catastrophic decisions of this 3-year war that the United States has been helping Ukraine wage. I'll just tell you categorically, there is no chance that long-range missiles being able to be used by Ukraine now will have any impact whatsoever on the tactical fight. It will not slow down Russia's advance. It will not help Ukraine have a chance to reverse course. All it will do is potentially escalate this war into drawing in the United States and possibly NATO into a war, and raises for the first time to maybe to the highest level since the fall of 2022, the possibility of nuclear escalation. And it is just, I think, irresponsible of the current administration, even by their own announcements and by their own claims, this is not going to change the outcome of the war. Then why would you want to risk nuclear escalation on the threshold of handing over to an incoming administration that says they want to reach a negotiated settlement to end it?
How would you respond to the argument defenders of this are making? They, I think, are saying, well, we've authorized this action to induce Russia to be more willing to negotiate because they could be damaged by these attacks, not damaged in a way to harm the Russian military or government or stem the actual, change the course of battle, yes, but to make Russia want to end this headache sooner. That's, I think, the argument they're making. What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's either the most extraordinary level of naivete or arrogance that's way beyond the pale, and that's really saying something for Washington, D.C. I've seen any number of general officers make that very argument over the last 48 hours or so. And I got to say, have you not paid any attention over the last nearly 3 years of this war, or over the last, say, I don't know, couple of centuries of Russian history? It is beyond ridiculous to suggest that a handful of long-range missiles is somehow going to make Putin change his calculation at this point when everything in the world is on Russia's side. They have the manpower advantages, decisive. They have the defense industrial base advantages that are decisive. They have allies that are really producing lots of ammunition and weapon systems that Russia uses. There is no capacity left on the Ukraine side to even hold on to what they have, much less ever reverse it. So there is no chance that it's going to cause Russia to do that, and it's almost insulting to suggest otherwise.
But if you take the view, which I think you said in your response there, that everything in the world is on Russia's side right now, then does the United States just do nothing and let Russia roll on? I mean, what if you take the view that the momentum is with the Russians, the permission to use long-range missiles does not stop or slow that momentum, then what does one do except reconcile oneself to Ukraine's defeat?
See, those who make that kind of argument imply, and that's why I said a minute ago with the arrogance issue, that there's actually a choice to make. This war is practically fundamentally over. The end is already known. The only thing that's a question is how long it's going to drag out, how many more Ukrainian men are going to die, how much more territory will be lost. The most sane, wise, and moral position that the United States could take now is to end this war at the best terms possible at the negotiating table. Ignoring that fact and ignoring that possibility and clinging to this fiction that just one more silver bullet type weapon is going to somehow change Russian actions, all it does is condemn the people that we care about the most, the Ukrainian people, to more suffering and destruction. I think it's reprehensible when people make that argument.
Can we talk to Vladimir Putin when Trump gets into office and structure some kind of peace settlement that does not involve more Ukrainian territory falling into Russian hands. Is that something you think Vladimir Putin could go for?
It's a dicey situation at this time. I'll just tell you, while I'm a big advocate of Trump coming in and doing exactly what he said he would do on the campaign trail, I mean, everybody needs to keep a sober understanding that he's got a weak hand to negotiate with. Trump's a great negotiator and businessman. That's how he made his name. But you also have to have assets to be able to have a good negotiation. And then right now, all the big cards are in Russia's hand because they can say, no, if you don't give me everything I want. And remember, on June 14th, Putin said that he wanted all 4 of the oblasts that they had annexed. Well, if you look at the map, Ukraine still has some of those positions, especially in the Kherson and the Zaporizhia oblasts. So Putin is saying, you have to give up more territory than I've already taken, or I'll just keep fighting and take everything that I want. That's the problem, is that if we don't negotiate and do something like that can bring this to an end, we may end up losing even more and more people. That's the hard situation that Trump's going to be in.
Yeah,
I take the point about the weak hand. I mean, I think that's a completely plausible argument. I'm just curious, though, I mean, should we then make no effort to strengthen the Ukrainian hand? Because getting back to the point of the long-range missiles, I don't think anyone really thinks that is going to transform the battlefield calculus to such an extent that Ukraine is going to romp to victory. But I think the argument, and Robbie alluded to this earlier, is that it permits the Ukrainians to hold on to the territory that you've mentioned, some in the Kursk region, that would strengthen their hand for negotiation. You don't obviously see it that way, right?
It doesn't. It doesn't strengthen their hand. That's what these generals that I've seen, it just frustrate me to no end because they claim that it can, but it can't. And if you need any more proof, all you have to do is look at the last 24 months of Russia's long-range missile campaign, to include just 24, or I guess about 48 hours ago was the latest round, where they have near impunity to strike all over the Ukrainian land. Ukraine has very limited air defense, in some places none whatsoever, and Russia is just hitting all of these energy systems, command and control, ammunition depots, etc., at will. And they've been doing it for 2 years. Ukraine has a fraction of the number of missiles. If we give them everything that we have into a much, much larger Russian country that has good air defense systems, apparently all 6 of the ATACMS that were fired overnight were all shot down, and only one of them apparently hit part of its target. We have no confirmation of that part yet. But you see that Russia has been doing this exact campaign of long-range strikes, and it has never brought Ukraine to its knees by itself. Unless you have a comprehensive situation, long-range missiles, and a coherent and a strong ground force that can also put pressure to bear, this one element will not strengthen anybody's hand. It's just not true.
I know you're a military analyst, not a political pundit, but in trying to process why the Biden administration has now taken this position that, yeah, sure, fire long-range missiles into Russia, I wonder if it's an effort to make things more difficult for Trump out of spite or something to bring about an end to this conflict, because it seems like all of the military advisors, even on our side, are saying that this war can't be reasonably won by Ukraine. Is this a last-ditch effort to complicate peace efforts actually in the region?
Well, I do have some insider information on what some of the people in the Trump world are thinking about this, but I don't have any such access whatsoever to the Biden administration, so I could only speculate. But what I can tell you authoritatively is that it will greatly complicate things for the Trump administration, which I think is a real travesty, because at least in part, he was elected because of his stance on ending this Russia-Ukraine war. And a lot of people voted because that's what they want to see, too. They don't want to see another forever war that's being, supported year after year for no apparent purpose and with no success. And so now here's Trump coming in, and he's, again, signaling very clearly he's going to do exactly what he said during the campaign. But now all of a sudden, there's a chance that Russia could escalate this before we get in there, especially if they hit something sensitive in any future rounds of strikes.